Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, QIT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Hey, it'd be nice to have a camera on me. There we go. Now you can see me. Hey, welcome to the show. Great Thursday show for you guys lined up. You're not going to want to miss this because we're going to discuss a lot of things. We have, of course, we'll start out with fun, and then we will go to a little bit of drama. But we've also got a fantastic poll that I want to share with you guys. And then Donald Trump's spiritual advisor talks immigration, and that's all sorts of fun. Then we've got drama within the Democratic Party. A couple of things happening. We've got superdelegates, and we also have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus Joe Crowley erupting on Twitter. That's fun. We're going to dive into that, what that fight's all about. It involves third parties, and it gets a little weird. But we'll break that down. We'll have a great discussion. Then we have a dystopian type game show that we're going to talk about. It's a game show where the winner gets their student debt paid off. Yay or nay? That's going to be a very interesting discussion. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that because I'm not quite sure where I land. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it exploitative? I was going to say exploitative, but I don't even think that's a real word. So I'm gonna try to use real words and not make things up, like fake news would do. We are not fake news. We're real news. Anyway, I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm in an interesting mood today, so it's gonna be a fun show. So what we're gonna do is before we start into the segments, please everybody like and share this stream. Very, very important that you share. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button as well. But yes, like and share. If you have anything you want to say to the show, for example, if you have any sort of comments, commentary, or any message that you want to send, Jeff will read anything in the prompter. So, in the super chat. So if you have anything to say, go ahead and use the super chat, and I'll read it on here. Okay. Anyway, that said, we're going to go into the show. We'll start out with fun, Stable Genius. But wait, hasn't this already been done? No. We'll get into it. Okay. Anyway, exploitative is a real word. Oh, good. Fantastic. I need to hit my thesaurus a few more times, or a lot of times. I don't even own a thesaurus, which is sad. Anyway, let's move on. First story, Stable Genius. Okay. Now, President Trump wants you to know that he is a very stable genius. Now, he has said this before. He's talked about this before. In fact, we've got the tweets that started the whole stable genius thing. In fact, he was talking about, this was back in January, earlier this year, he was talking about Russian collusion. He said it's proven to be a total hoax on the American public. The Democrats and their lapdogs, fake news, are taking out the old Ronald Reagan playbook and screaming mental stability and intelligence. Actually, throughout my life, my two greatest assets have been mental stability and being, really smart. Crooked Hillary also played these cards very hard, and as everyone knows, went down in flames. I went from very successful businessman to top TV star to President of the United States on my first try. I think that would qualify as not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. Those are the tweets from before. Now he's going to remind people after the UN summit that he is, in fact, a very stable genius. Let's watch.
and daily newspaper. We understand your message.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. We understand your message, but some people ask themselves, will you be tweeting differently once you board the Air Force One? Thank you.
No, that's other people that do that. I don't. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. Go ahead.
He is a very stable genius. Very consistent. No. No, here's the thing. Actually, you do that. You've done that before. You undercut your own press secretaries. Remember poor old Spicy? Yeah, it's got a new book out, by the way. I don't know if I will ever read it, but he used to undercut Spicy all the fucking time. And then Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But no, what are you talking about? I'm very consistent. I have not changed my positions on anything, except I have changed my positions on a lot of things. But of course, no, I haven't. I'm a very stable genius. No, what he is he's a pathological liar. He's about as consistent as a windsock. But for example, hey, this family separation. I got this new policy that's going to separate families at the border, keep them out of the United States. Oh, was that my policy? Oh, no, it was actually Obama's policy. It's Obama's fault. I was always against family separation. I am so glad that the Democrats finally came to the table and made it so that we're not going to do family separation. Actually, no. What you did is you signed an executive order saying no family separation after you got destroyed in the media by different politicians. Even Republican politicians were saying, hey, maybe you need to stop, separating families at the border. Now, of course, Republicans are like, yeah, we actually got a better plan. Let's stop separating the families and then get rid of the law that says that you can't keep that you can't keep kids in detention for more than 20 days so that we can keep the families together in detention indefinitely. That's the real plan when it comes to the family separation, when it comes to people seeking asylum. They just don't want people here. But anyway, that's to show you how many times he's kind of switched his position. But see, here's the thing. This is the fact that Trump switches positions all the time and that he lies about it all the time is why nobody trusts the United States anymore. Look, used to be the world could count on the United States to do several things, right? Number one, invade places with oil. Okay, you could count on the United States to invade any place that's got oil on it. That's terrible. But that is at least something that was consistent with the United States. Do trade deals that benefit American corporations. That's the second thing, which is what we've done. NAFTA, CAFTA, and, of course, TPP, right? Which we ended up not doing, and I got to give Trump a little bit of credit for that. And then the third thing, which is actually a good thing, is when we make a commitment, we usually own up to it. We usually keep our word, right? Now, as I said, two of those things are awful. And we're still doing those two awful things. We're still invading places with oil in order to get oil, or at least planning invasions of places that have oil and exploiting populations and exploiting natural resources. And we're still doing trade deals that benefit American corporations, or at least planning on it. Again, President Trump's got a plan to replace the TPP that was sort of a lot like TPP. Interesting. But anyway, now, the things where he pulled out of, well, I mean, look, we backed out of the Iran deal. The Iran deal was actually a good deal because it had verification of Iran's nuclear disarmament, unlike anything that we signed with Kim Jong-un, which, by the way, the North Koreans are like, ooh, yeah, it turns out we met with Mike Pompeo, and that was regrettable. It was so regrettable that Kim Jong-un would rather, instead of meet with Pompeo to discuss this, he would rather visit a potato farm. Yeah, oh, yeah, fuck that guy. No, I'm going to go to the potato farm. Much more interesting than talking with fucking Pompeo. Because guess what? We're not going to denuclearize. We were never going to denuclearize. But Trump gave us everything that we wanted. And they got nothing in return. Well, congratulations on being a master negotiator and a very stable genius, Mr. Trump. But look, the other thing that we pulled out of was the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, that agreement, of course, was a good step in trying to prevent climate change from getting worse. We pulled out of it, and now, of course, it's getting worse. There's actually more, I should say, greenhouse gases now being released under the Trump administration. Why? Because we're burning more oil. We're doing more oil deals. We're putting more emphasis on fossil fuels. So that, of course, is going to be terrible for the environment. And the Trump, of course, doesn't care. So basically what we've shown the world is that we're incredibly untrustworthy when we give our word, and that we're also still a warmongering country. Just as much, if not even more so. In fact, right now we are supporting Saudi Arabia in their war with Yemen. That is basically starving 7 million people in Yemen. Wonderful. Just fucking wonderful. But anyway, look, here's the real reason that Trump is, by the way, axing some of these, or had axed some of these agreements, like Iran and the Iran deal and of course, the TPP even, which, again, I give him credit for. It's because Obama had negotiated them. He's not a stable genius. What he is an unstable, jealous man-child. And so it's always hilarious when you hear him talking about, oh, no, some of my greatest assets, man, is that I have mental stability, and I'm, like, really smart. Who talks like that? Well, now the President of the United States talks like that, and, of course, his supporters love him for it. It is pretty much the end of any kind of, I was going to say civility, but that also is a part of it. It's more of a celebration of idiocy. We have lowered the bar so low that it's going to be really hard to go lower. Of course, if there's one thing that's consistent about Republicans, is that they will try very, very hard to lower the bar even further. Stable genius. Okay. Moving on. Okay. So President Trump has a spiritual advisor. That already is pretty problematic. I think that this is not a position that should be in the government because, again, it's religion inside the government, and religion has no place inside the government. Nonetheless, this spiritual advisor is Paula White, and she's basically nothing more than a right-wing hack who uses religion to try to justify Trump's terrible policies. One of those policies happens to be immigrant detention. Now, she said this week that if Jesus would have been sinful and would not have been our Messiah if he had broken immigration laws. So basically, well, look, we wouldn't be celebrating Jesus if he broke immigration law. Fascinating. Now, White recently toured an immigrant detention center in Virginia and said during an interview with CBN, that's Pat Robertson's network, that there was a difference between immigrants being detained for illegally entering the U.S. and Jesus being a refugee in Egypt. She said, the Gospel of Matthew describes Jesus and his parents Mary and Joseph fleeing Egypt shortly after Jesus' birth to escape King Herod, who sought to kill the infant. And she said on that, I think so many people have taken biblical scriptures out of context on this to say stuff like, well, Jesus was a refugee. And yes, he did live in Egypt for 3.5 years, but it was not illegal. If he had broken the law, then he would have been sinful, and he would not have been our Messiah. So first, there's a lot of stuff that I want to break down in this. A lot of problems here. Number one, of course, being that as I mentioned before, what the hell is the Bible have anything to do with government? There needs to be a wall between a wall that separates church and state. Period. Wall of separation. Okay, anyway. Mentioning that, let's go to something else. I don't think there was a thing called illegal immigration back then. I'm just saying. I certainly don't think that they had people going out there, the Egyptian equivalent of ICE, out there saying, "Oh, no, hold on here. You need documents. You need documentation to cross the border in the country." I don't think that was a thing. Number 3, she talks about how, well, it's different because Jesus was a refugee. These kids were also refugees. These families. Look, they were fleeing war, disease. Well, not disease, sorry. But war, gang violence, poverty, etc. And look, most of these families, I think the vast majority of these families, when they were coming in to the United States, they surrendered themselves to Border Patrol. They said, "We are here to request asylum because we are fleeing our homes. We would like to request asylum," which is how you're supposed to actually do it. So, by definition, they are not illegal immigrants because they have asked for asylum the legal way, which is the way that you're supposed to do it. So, in essence, they actually are not breaking the law, and therefore, according to your own criteria, are just like Jesus in that respect. Anyway, speaking of Jesus, right, breaking laws. Now, what happened to Jesus? Oh, right, he happened to be crucified by the Roman government. Now, why would he be crucified by the Roman government? Oh, right, he must have broke some laws. And they just didn't randomly crucify people, did they? You had to have done something to deserve that fate. And so, oh, Jesus, not a lawbreaker? Actually, I kind of celebrate some of the ways that Jesus broke the law. For example, he went up into the temple with a whip and started whipping the money changers. That is fucking boss. That's badass. I wish more people would do that today. Look, and finally, and on the bankers thing, by the way. So she wants to talk about how, there's, if she wants to use the example of Jesus, right? Jesus, as I said, with the bankers, drove them out of the temple. The Trump administration, whom she serves, invited the bankers into the administration. I'm just saying, you want to follow Jesus's example, well, you best get yourself a whip and start, well, if there are any Goldman Sachs members left in the administration, you might want to start whipping. Whip it good. Just saying. But finally, on immigrants, look, here's the thing. The Bible, if you read it, you would know that it's literally filled with passages that say things like immigrants, you should treat immigrants like you would your own family. It's in there. It's numerous passages, Old and New Testament, say, treat immigrants well. Treat the immigrants as if they are your own people. It's in the Bible, I swear. It is in there if you actually open it up and fucking read it. But here's the real problem. Most people don't. Most people who call themselves religious will go out and cherry pick. For example, the one thing, and I love how she talks about, people take the scriptures and stuff, and they take them out of context. On the numerous passages talking about how, hey, you should welcome immigrants into your home, into the country, and treat them like family. Numerous. But they always go back to one passage to go after gay people. Man shall not lay with another man, as they do a woman. One passage in the Old Testament which is supposed to be invalid anyway if you know your religion because it's the new covenant. Look, I'm an atheist and I know all about this stuff. Why? Because, well, reading the Bible is what made me an atheist. Like, oh, a lot of this doesn't make fucking sense. Well, I read it. There's good stuff in it, like the stuff about immigrants, and there's so many terrible things in it. And then there's just shit that don't make sense. But this is, I'm going to try to do more or less Bible critique and more critique on this hacky, spiritual advisor. So the point is, though, that you have these people that are willfully reinterpreting the Bible in order to fit their own political narrative. And then they go out and later say, oh, no, what are you talking about? I'm a great Christian. I'm following the Bible. No, you don't. You're not following the Bible. What you're doing is that you're using this as a vehicle to trick dumb people who actually haven't read their Bible, don't know what's in it. And then you tell them and you say, well, you're supposed to hate these people. These are the people you're supposed to hate based on my interpretation of the Bible that I'm telling you because you haven't read it and you haven't interpreted it yourself. And of course, who do they hate? The immigrants. Some interpret it to hate the poor. Which, of course, again, if you actually read the Bible, if you read it, it's full of, as I said, contradictions. But the one thing it never contradicts, the one thing it never says anything terrible about is you need to make sure to treat the poor and immigrants with respect. Because those people are the kingdom of God, right? Those people are the blessed. Blessed are the poor. However, again, the modern Republican Party is not about the poor. They're about protecting the rich and corporations. They go against exactly what the Bible was supposed to be about. Poor people, immigrants, the downtrodden, the dregs of society, the wretched, on and on and on, right? Well, the modern Republican Party, while certainly wretched, is not about those things. They don't protect the poor. They hate the poor. They hate the immigrants. And it's all political. And so when it's all political, it ends up not being very Christian of them, which I suppose is the point. And again, using religion to hate other people is the tale as old as time. And Paula White continues that fine tradition in service of the Trump administration. But she is no real Christian. I know, because I'm not a real Christian either. I guess it takes one to know one. She's using it to justify terrible policy because that's all they know what to do. Okay. Let me see. So let's move away from Trump, and we'll talk about the problems within the Democratic Party. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back, and we'll do that story on... We've got a heartening poll. You're going to like that. Then we've got superdelegates. And then finally, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus Joe Crowley in November. What? We've got that story. Come right back around the nation. All right, back and around the nation here. Welcome back to the show. If you haven't already, please give us a like and share on YouTube. That helps us out greatly. Of course, anybody here who hasn't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button already. Now, before I get back into the show, I do have a super chat that I want to read here from Peter S., which is pretty funny. He says, Trump has farted in the car of America. And it's one of those ones, I think, where the window is stuck. You can't roll it down. So you just have to sit there as it wafts in front of your face. Ugh. For the next 2 years? Jesus. How have we survived this long? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on here. Let's go to the next story. Good news. And then, again, more Democratic infighting. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's the right one. Okay. So, if you're on Twitter, you might notice that there is a section of Democrats that are incredibly vocal about hating Bernie Sanders. In fact, you've got a lot of people that are like, Bernie Sanders, he's not even a Democrat. He's not even a Democrat. Why should our party change for him? Why should our party actually go and embrace things like Medicare for all, expanding Social Security, $15 minimum wage, or I should say living wage, free college for all? Why should we do any of that? Bernie's not even a Democrat. He's not one of us. We don't want him. We don't want him anywhere near the party. And look, you have some politicians, for example, Nancy Pelosi, saying after the win of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that socialism is not ascendant in the Democratic Party. You have Tammy Duckworth coming out and saying, well, look, you know, those kind of policies, sure, they're good for New York and the Bronx, but when it comes to middle America, you know, in the Midwest, that stuff's just not going to be successful at all. In fact, and the Democrats, we should stay away from that. In fact, the Democrats don't even want somebody like Bernie Sanders. Really? Well, we happen to have a little bit of a poll that would prove otherwise. In fact, this new poll was released yesterday, and it was done by YouGov, and it showed that a majority of Democrats actually want more candidates in 2018 to be like Bernie Sanders. Now, the polling firm asked, do you wish the candidates who run for Congress this year to be more or less like Bernie Sanders? Now, here is the response. A full 57% of Democratic respondents said they want their candidates to be more like Bernie Sanders. Now, who said less? 16 and 27% of Democrats responded not sure. 57% to 16. Fascinating. So here you have a majority of the party saying, I want our politicians to be more like Bernie, to take his positions. Awesome. Now, it's probably because those positions are incredibly popular with the American people. Again, all things that have majority support, $15 minimum wage, free college for everybody, Medicare for all. Very popular stuff. Taking care of old people, protecting Social Security, etc. Come on, man. Democrats, you need to learn. Like, run on these policies and you might actually win, because guess what? You're going to bring out new voters, and you're going to bring out and you're going to excite the base. You need the base. Now, let me give you some more information here. Independents, however, were split. 27% said more like Sanders, 35% said less, and 38% were not sure. So on independents polled in this poll, not as good. And of course, among conservatives, only 13% of Republicans said that they wanted candidates to be more like Sanders. 74% said less. Now, here is my read of that situation. I think it's more like, oh crap, if more politicians were like Bernie Sanders, then our politicians are going to get crushed. Because it turns out those ideas are incredible. That's just my read of the situation. But, it might not be that. It might be the fact that they just hate Medicare for all. Actually, no, they don't. That even scores well among Republicans. So that might be something that, look, I think they're afraid. They're afraid of Democrats running like Bernie Sanders on Bernie Sanders style issues because they will crush the opposition. Anyway, now that survey, to give you some details, it interviewed 1,500 plus U.S. adults from July 8th through July 10th and had a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points, which is fairly normal when it comes to a poll. But with 57% of Democrats saying yes, more like Bernie Sanders, it ain't even close. It's a blowout. Now add in other polling that says that Bernie's positions are popular and that Bernie Sanders himself is incredibly popular, and that the recent win of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez by double digits, look, it shows you that those ideas are actually ascendant. It's almost as if Democrats really seem to like what Bernie Sanders stands for. And more importantly, Bernie Sanders himself. Or maybe less importantly, Bernie Sanders himself, because it ends up being the policy that really matters. Now, it also seems like those same policies would really do well in the Midwest. Why do I say that? Well, because he won Michigan in the primary, as well as Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana. Now, he did barely lose Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, but again, a lot of those can be attributed to not having good name recognition early on in the race. Now, where did Hillary Clinton do the best? Not to relitigate 2016, but in the primary, she did better in the South, which was front-loaded at a time when Bernie Sanders had very little name recognition. So it is very possible that he could have done well there had they had similar advantages. So it seems like Sanders and his policies do well in places that aren't just the coast. Maybe Democrats, you might want to think about that. You can add this poll to the rest, showing that Sanders and his ideas are really popular and can win elections. Not just in 2018, but I believe that a Bernie Sanders candidate or Bernie Sanders himself could win, actually would probably crush Donald Trump. And so that, I think, is one of the most important lessons that you can take from all this different polling. I just hope that the Democratic Party listens to those and pays attention and actually does do that. We need to move left if we're going to win against Trump and against the Republicans. Okay. Moving on. Now, here's some people that are not interested in Sanders. Okay. Superdelegates are not happy with the plan to reduce their power. In fact, according to Politico, a band of Democratic National Committee superdelegates is now staging a revolt against that plan to reduce their influence, and they're mounting a long-shot bid to block the measure when the DNC meets in Chicago next month. Now, the proposal, of course, which is championed by progressives, would prohibit superdelegates from voting on the first presidential nominating ballot at a contested national convention. Now, of course, the convention actually has to be contested for this to happen, but nonetheless, it is basically removing some of the power from superdelegates, and that is awesome. Now, even as the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee moved forward with the proposal, there were some superdelegates outside of Washington that were organizing some opposition to the passage of these rules. Now, William Owen, one of them, he's a superdelegate and DNC member from Tennessee, who has been contacting fellow DNC members ahead of the gathering, said, quote, "If we don't have a vote, then what good are we? In Chicago, this will not be rubber stamped." I take it he's a little upset that he's starting to lose his power. Well, there's more. You also have Bob Mulholland. Now, he is a superdelegate and DNC member from California. Now, he's been in talks with other superdelegates from the West. And he said, quote, "The more DNC members realize that this so-called reform is to throw them off the floor, I think there will be a lot of complaints in Chicago." And he also likened this to 1968. He said, "Unfortunately, while the Republicans are winning elections and taking over the Supreme Court, we'll be in Chicago looking like 1968. Now, why 1968? Well, that's the last time, pre-2016, there was a bit of unrest at the convention. So, oh, no, we don't want to appear like we're contested, like we're having an issue between the people in power and the base. But that's exactly what we're having. That's exactly what happened in 2016 when we had massive massive delegate walkouts in favor of Bernie Sanders. It's like they know that there's a problem, but again, they want to pretend that there isn't a problem, that there hasn't been a revolt by the base, by progressives that are unhappy with the way that the party is actually going. There was this little thing called Demexit that they have chosen to basically ignore. Well, ignore at their peril. But let me show you why they're actually angry, right? Here's the real reason, right? The superdelegates, according to Politico, stand to lose significant influence over the party's selection of a nominee and are complaining that elected officials and longtime party operatives are being disenfranchised. Oh, are you being disenfranchised? Is your voice not being heard, Mr. Superdelegate? Let me get out the world's tiniest violin for your ass. What about the voters who were disenfranchised by the DNC? What about the voters who, look, voted for Bernie Sanders or caucused for Bernie Sanders, and yet superdelegates in those same states said, "Yeah, I hear you, but I'm with her." And so they pledged themselves behind Hillary Clinton anyway. What about them? What about their voice? Did they not get disenfranchised? They don't care about that, though. No, what they care about is their own power. And of course, as a superdelegate, you have a degree of power. You can actually go and usurp the will of the voters by saying, "I'm going to vote for this person instead." I'm not tied to who the state voted for, whether it be a primary election, which I prefer to caucuses, by the way, because it's more democratic. And that's the whole point. You want the Democratic Party to be actually small d democratic. But unfortunately, we are not. Now, let me give you another quote here. Don Fowler, a former DNC chairman, an outspoken critic of the rules change, asked, quote, "For what? Why? Why vote if you can't affect the outcome?" Well, that's what they want. They want to affect the outcome. They said that eliminating superdelegates' votes in the first ballot would only increase the likelihood of convention going to a second ballot, where superdelegates would have their votes restored, potentially weighing in against the top vote getter on the first ballot. Oh, so you're afraid of a contested convention? You're afraid of the voters saying one thing and you saying the other? And then what? You've got to override the will of the voters. Well, I mean, that's what we're going to do, but boy, that looks bad for us. In fact, he described that scenario as the, quote, "great horror," that the party would have a very difficult time surviving. Or maybe you can give up your power and give up being the superdelegate and let the people decide. But of course, they're not going to do that. Representative Jerry Connolly called the proposal, quote, "a craven capitulation to what Perez describes as a perception of elitism." That's not a perception, boy. That is, there is an elitism problem within the Democratic Party. And that's basically shown by the elites inside the party basically picking and choosing their nominees. And look, they can do so. They've admitted that, yes, if we wanted to, behind closed doors and smoke-filled rooms, we could pick our nominee. And you don't have to, you can't do anything about it. We can overrule the will of the people. How is that not elitism? Now, Connolly, like the other opponents of the plan, argued that, quote, disenfranchising the elected leadership of the party would disconnect elected leaders from the party's presidential ticket, ultimately weakening its prospects in 2020. No. Well, all that does is that weakens you politically. So you want to say, look, I was supporting you the whole time. So in return, maybe I get a little something from you because I was your superdelegate. I stood by you, and I voted for you. I made sure that you got the nod because it was your turn. And then in return, I get something nice from you. See how this works? But goddamn voters, you got to come and ruin that. DNC Reform Commission, you got to come and ruin that with your progressive ideas and you actually wanting the DNC to be the Democratic Party to be democratic. No, the horror. It is the great horror. Now, not only that, but Connolly added that this proposal was, quote, political malpractice. Oh, it's such political malpractice. Now let's get back to Owen here. Now Owen said, quote, and this is, let me get William Owen. He's that superdelegate from Tennessee. He said, quote, this is serious. We have a saying in the South that's, quote, as worthless as nipples on a boar hog, which means you can suck on them all you want, but you don't get anything out of it. If the proposal is adopted, that's what will be. Now, of course, that's going to get an award for the most awkward quote about boar tits. Look, man, if you're into that, that's weird. In fact, that could be animal abuse. I'm just saying. But really, seriously, though, that's the whole point. We want you to be worthless. We want you to not have power inside the Democratic Party. We don't need superdelegates. Look, here's the thing. The Democratic Party is less small d Democratic than the Republican Party because of superdelegates. Republicans don't have superdelegates. They just don't. And look, I bet maybe some of them do, wish they did, after Trump. But remember, he has an over 90% approval rating among Republican voters. And guess what? The most important thing is they win. They win. In fact, they've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the White House, they've got the courts, they've got a majority of state houses and state legislatures. Why is that? It's not because they have better policy. No, their policies are the same. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. That's all they're selling. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. Oh, and of course, fear. Oh, yeah, better get out there. Democrats, they're out to steal your jobs and stuff. The thing is that the real fear here comes from the Republican politicians. They fear their base. They fear incurring the wrath of their base. Why? Because, well, they're active, they get out and vote, and they actually hold their politicians accountable. And yes, right now the Republican Party is so monstrous that they vote for literal monsters. In fact, we've got a swamp monster sitting in the White House right now. But while Republicans fear their base, the Democratic Party loathes theirs. And what they do is that they do anything that they can to go and ignore that base. Superdelegates is one of those ways. We don't have to listen to the people. We don't have to listen to our progressive base. No. I'm with her. I'm with the establishment. I'm with the people that are going to make me tons and tons of money and give me sweet political positions. That's who I'm with. So yeah, I'm a superdelegate, and I want to keep that power so that I can make the decision over the voters, because I don't believe in democracy. This is why they're absolutely screaming bloody murder at this change from the DNC Reform Commission, Unity Reform Commission. Namiki Kantz was on it. James Zogby was on it. There's a lot of great progressives that were on it that actually went to try to limit the power of superdelegates. And I would love to see them completely eliminated. But this is one good first step, that is to remove some of their power. And I think that's good. But as far as they're concerned, this is probably the worst thing that has ever happened to them. And that's why they're fighting so hard against it. The good news about that is that it's very unlikely that their opposition is going to mean a thing when the votes get counted in Chicago. So there is one good thing to take away from this story. Despite their so-called resistance to democracy, democracy might actually win. Okay. Moving on. So there appears to be some drama between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her once rival Joe Crowley. Now, look, Joe Crowley was the number 4 Democrat in the House, and he was defeated soundly by double digits by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, she ran an amazing campaign. She knocked down a lot of doors. She had a complete money disadvantage. She had a media disadvantage. Nonetheless, she fought hard. She ran an excellent campaign. She knocked on so many doors. She wore out a pair of shoes doing so. And she got people excited. And she won. Now, Joe Crowley, however, a little bit sore about that. And the newest news is that he is running against her in November. Wait a minute. Now, The Hill is reporting that Ocasio-Cortez has just accused Representative Crowley of refusing to concede the Democratic Party race and is now mounting a third-party challenge against her. Third party. Now, let me read her tweet here. She said, Representative Joe Crowley stated on live TV that he would absolutely support my candidacy. Instead, he stood me up for all 3 scheduled concession calls. Now he's mounting a third-party challenge against me and my Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party, and against the will of the New York Working Families Party. So what the hell is going on here? There's a lot to break down, because it actually is a complicated situation. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, of course, was responding to a recent New York Times article that stated that Crowley is actually on the November ballot, not as a Democrat, but as a member of the Working Families Party. He is a literal candidate for the Working Families Party. Fascinating. Now, how did that happen? Well, when he was running in the primary, he ended up getting the endorsement of the Working Families Party. Now, that endorsement meant that, of course, he also got put on the ballot as a candidate to run in as a member of the Working Families Party, which is a strange thing to happen for sure. When he lost, of course, the New York Working Families Party said, okay, you might want to drop that because we're not interested in having you as a candidate because you're not supposed to be running. In fact, what we want to do is we want to endorse Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez instead. Or I believe that's the story. Now, while he was running, as I said, he got an endorsement. But when he lost, Working Families Party State Director Bill Lipton said he had reached out to Crowley and asked him to vacate the line. And he said subsequently his campaign refused. No, sorry, we're not going to vacate the line. Now, apparently they have some reasons for this, and I'll get into that. But first, I got a quote from Lipton. He said, quote, "You think that given the moment we're in, that Democratic leaders would want to help progressive forces to unite?" Well, that's true. In fact, that's what Crowley had promised. Oh, no, don't worry. I'm going to back your campaign. I'm going to do it enthusiastically because we got to beat the Republican in November. That's the most important thing. Well, it's going to be harder to beat the Republican in November if you're also on the ballot, Mr. Joe Crowley. And it's just kind of funny how now we've got a third-party challenge. What was this about unity? What was this about running as a Democrat? I mean, don't run third-party candidates. Don't run as third-party candidates. Third parties are bad. They're going to spoil the elections. And yet, Mr. Crowley is a spoiler to an election. Weird. Look, I guess when a progressive wins the Democratic Party nomination against an establishment tool like Mr. Crowley, third-party challenges are suddenly okay. Fascinating. Now, of course, Crowley says, no, what are you talking about? I'm not actually running. Oh, yes, I'm on the Working Families Party ballot in November, but I'm not actually running against her. No, I fully support Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And in fact, she is being so incredibly unfair to me right now. She is being so mean. In fact, here's a tweet. He said, Alexandria, the race is over, and Democrats need to come together. We need to have unity. I made my support for you clear in the fact that I'm not running. We've scheduled phone calls, and your team has not followed through. I'd like to connect, but I'm not willing to air grievances on Twitter. So, okay. So now you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign saying, look, you won't concede. We've tried to get you on calls, but you won't do it. And then you have Crowley saying, no, it's you. You're the ones who aren't setting up that concession call. Now, who do you believe? She said that this is a Crowley campaign aide told The Hill that Ocasio-Cortez's claim about him standing up concession calls was a lie. She said numerous phone calls have been set up, but Ocasio-Cortez's aides have failed to follow through with providing a phone number. I don't believe that at all. Then, when asked about Mr. Crowley's plans regarding the Working Families Party line, this is interesting. A campaign spokeswoman said only Joe Crowley is a Democrat. He's made clear that he's not running for Congress and supports the Democratic nominee in New York 14. But nonetheless, he's still on the ballot. And nonetheless, that could lead to people voting for Crowley in the general election. So how would you get off the ballot? I mean, can he just leave? Well, it actually gets complicated. The New York Times notes that in Crowley's case, vacating that line is actually not a simple process. They said that the Working Families Party must go through a convoluted legal maneuver, essentially nominating the unwanted primary winner for another electoral position on the ballot, often one that he or she has little chance of winning, like a county clerkship in the region of the state dominated by the other party. So let me just go back to how New York has some of the worst electoral laws in the country. I mean, where do we always seem to have problems with the Democratic Party? In New York. For example, we'll go back to the rule of you must register a year before the primaries in order to vote in the primaries. What? That's insane. That is super crazy. Oh, you have to be registered for a year. And then, of course, there were ballots being purged during the primary election between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. So that was weird. They've got all sorts of weird, arcane electoral laws. And now they have this. So Crowley had to go to the Working Families Party and say, oh, okay, nominate me for something crazy that I'll never win. Now, the problem is he hasn't done that already. And he said no indication of doing that. Now, as soon as I had lost, if I were Mr. Joe Crowley, and if I were serious about supporting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the November election, I think I would have went to the Working Families Party and said, okay, look, our election laws are weird. I know I got your endorsement. So just nominate me for something crazy that I'll never win. And then if this ever comes up, well, then we know you can go and tell people that, oh, no, I'm running for some crazy, position, county clerk somewhere in a really conservative area. I'm never going to win this. So it's okay. I'm not actually running in New York 14. Did he do that? No, he didn't do that. Which tells me a couple of things, right? For one, I think he does want to be a spoiler in the general. Well, why do I think that? Because I think he wants to split enough of the vote to allow a Republican to win. Now, why would he want to do that? Well, maybe he's upset that he got knocked off. He could have been a successor to Nancy Pelosi. That is a strong position. That comes with a lot of power. But then some 28-year-old upstart comes out of nowhere and knocks him off his perch. Well, now I'll never get to be leader of the House. You just screwed my political career. What the hell? Oh, that's it. Hey, turns out I'm still on the ballot. Maybe if nobody notices that I'm still on the ballot, I might be able to be just enough of a spoiler to let the Republican win. What could I do? Then later on I could say, hey man, look, stupid New York rules. What can they do? It wasn't my fault people voted for me and not for her. I guess her ideas just couldn't win a general. Progressive ideas, they just don't win. It's just like what we were telling you all along. Look, maybe I'm being too hard on him. Maybe I'm being conspiratorial. But, you know, it's possible with these people because, well, a lot of these politicians, all they care about is amassing power. And when they don't have power, when they get stripped of that power, I think they're understandably going to be very angry. Now, angry enough to do something like this is certainly possible. I don't know Crowley personally, so maybe I can't exactly say it. But nonetheless, that's my general idea. He wants to be a spoiler because the Democratic Party has shown over and over again, the leadership, I should say, has shown over and over again, that they would rather elect a Republican than a progressive. And if that's the case here, well then, it might just work. Okay. Moving on. Yeah, we're going to go overtime. So there is a new game show launching on True TV that promises to help contestants pay off their student loan debt. Now, this is, according to the Washington Post, a show called Paid Off, which is from comedian Michael Torpy and True TV. Now, what the Washington Post says is that they hope to highlight how many young Americans and college graduates are struggling to pay off their student loans. Now, 3 contestants will answer trivia questions, often with an education or college-related twist, and if they win, True TV would pay up to 100% of their loans, depending on how well they perform in a speed round. Now, let me just address that even if your loans get paid off, that doesn't mean like, okay, well, that's more for forgiveness, I guess. So I almost conflated the two issues. If they're actually going to pay it off, wonderful. But I worry about the tax thing. Because, look, I know if you get your student loans forgiven, that still ends up on your taxes because it gets reported as income. This will also likely be reported as income because they are getting a check. So, again, yes, while their student loans will be paid off, that's also a gigantic tax burden. So that's just another way it gets screwed over. The students get screwed over. But anyway, producers tried to pay the debt holder directly, however, but found the logistics too difficult, according to the Washington Post. Now, the show will have a comedy spin, but Torpy told the Post that they hope to raise awareness about the state of student loan debt in America. One of the mantras, they say, is an absurd show to match an absurd crisis, Torpy said, who hosts the program. A game show feels really apt because this is the state of things right now. So, look, I'm a little mixed about this. Because, look, okay. For one, they are actually trying to send a message. In fact, Torpy says that he's hoping to make the cost of higher education a political issue, regardless of political affiliation. And that's a good thing because 44 million Americans right now have student loan debt in excess of $37,000. And in total, the U.S. has roughly $1.3 trillion in student loan debt. And what are we doing about it? Well, we're not doing anything about it. In fact, the Department of Education is actually making it so that these student loan companies are even less regulated and can do more predatory loans just like they used to. And right now, the Department of Education, which is supposed to help students, which disperses these loans, they're actually making money off these loans. And, of course, the result is that a lot of these students are being loaded down with debt while the government makes money off them. And that's kind of a gross system. But anyway, at the end of the episode, he says, call your representatives right now and tell them you need a better solution to this than this game show. So, again, the motivations are actually sort of good. And I know, like I said, this is a hard one for me because it is kind of controversial. And it seems really exploitative as well. Like, oh, you're going to have these people fight it out. When I first read this headline, I was thinking, oh, great. This is like Hunger Games. Here we have, contestant from District 2 versus contestant from District 7. And they're going to fight it out to see who can actually go on and to be able to buy a home and participate in the economy because they don't have these gigantic student loans over their head. But again, I can't help think of the aspect of it of like, no, what we're trying to do here is this is absurd, and that, we're just trying to show how absurd it is. But then again, it's a game show, and I'm really I'm kind of creeped out by it in a way. Look, some people will get their, contestants will get their student loan pays off, and that's good. But this is a job that should be undertaken by the government. We shouldn't have students being loaded down with debt for the rest of their lives. And so, yeah, you have a game show that is going to point that debt out, but what are they actually doing? Again, there is a little bit of an exploitation aspect to it because they're going to watch these, people are going to watch these college students on television, and it's going to turn into and it's already a contest, and any contest is going to have winners and losers. And so the winner is actually going to be able to pay off their student loans, but what do the losers get? They still have that gigantic debt load. And so again, watching that, it just seems like really uncomfortable for me. And it's maybe because I have around $30,000 in student loan debt. I could be a contestant one of these days because I've got that over my head. So it's just, again, it seems really uncomfortable, and it is insane. And the creator is saying, yes, I know it's insane. That's why we're doing it. There's nothing more absurd than this game show that points out an absurd problem. I think the motivations behind it are good, but I think the execution, as usual, is kind of bad. But I want to let you know, I want to hear what you think about this. I want you to let me know what you think about this. Is it exploitative? Is it a possible good thing? Do you think that it will actually help people to get educated about the subject of student loans so they can lobby the government to try and do something about it? So I'm curious about what you guys think. And so if you could leave your comments below, and I'd really like to know. And I think actually I might make a poll about it. So watch for that in the community feed. All right. So there's that. One more story. Well, it appears that another black man was kicked out of a pool for basically doing nothing. This time, it's Indiana resident Shane Holland. Now, he, of course, taped this interaction between himself and a security guard who also happens to be an off-duty police department official. Now, the incident happened when he was sitting at the pool at an apartment complex that he has lived in since February of last year. Now, let me show you the video and the interaction, and then we're going to break it down. So take a look.
What up, Insta Live? We got another police officer after I showed her my key and walked up here and tried to kick me out of my own goddamn pool. I pay $1,600 in rent. What's your badge number? That's my question. And Candace? Yeah, tell her she looks stupid. Now tell her she looked dumb. Just tell her she looked dumb because I told her I showed her my key. She didn't have to come over here. I'm over here. Yeah, but I told her that but listen, hold up. First of all, the question that you asked me was, do I live here? I said yes. Then you asked me what my address was. I showed you my key. What more of a conversation needs to be held? Am I, like, seriously, what more of a conversation do I need to? But I'm saying, I did answer her question. I did. I told. Why do I need to give this lady who I don't know my address? I don't know her. I don't know if that's a fake ass badge. What do you mean? I don't. I'm saying, just seriously, just and just think about it from my perspective. Just think, yes, but you just came over here and ruined my alone time and my.
Shane.
Yes. Yes.
Being regulated.
I showed her my key. What else did I have to do, Candace? What else did I have to do? Why do I have to leave my pool that she don't live here? Do you live here?
There is a sign that says that I can ask for anybody to leave.
But for what? But for why am I leaving? I literally have been sitting here not doing shit. Literally just got over here. But I feel threatened. Honestly, I don't feel like I'm.
Yeah, Candace, what the hell's your problem? Now, look, according to the Indianapolis Star, he said at the situation, look, I had my headphones on when she approached me, so I didn't hear her the first time. When I asked her to repeat herself, she asked if I lived in the neighborhood. I said yes. When she asked me where I lived, I said, I don't know you, and you haven't identified yourself, so I'm not going to give you my address. Oh, that right there is the number one problem. You disrespected a police officer. That is the number one crime in America, don't you know? No, in reality, you shouldn't have to give an officer your address if you don't want to, especially if you haven't actually done anything wrong. All he did is he's sitting there, and this officer says, do you live here? Do you live here? Yeah, I live here. Here's my key. I have a key, and I've been living here since last year. Now go away and leave me to my day. I just want to sit here. I want to enjoy the pool that I help pay for with my rent. And I should be able to enjoy the pool. Now, the officer, of course, then contacted the complex's property manager to confirm Holland was a resident. The manager did confirm that. So that should have been the end of it. But unfortunately, that was not the end of it. The officer continued to press Holland, as you saw in the video. And he's like, I'm uncomfortable giving you my address. What, so that you can go and hassle me later? I live here. Here's my key. You already know I'm a resident. What's the deal? Why are you bothering me? Well, it's simple. She's still bothering you because you disrespected her. And that's what it's about. Never disrespect a police officer, because if you do, well, we're gonna come after you. It's gross. Now, here's the thing, right? This is not the first time it's happened. We've seen this before. Whether it be, Permit Patty, and some of the other really clever names that I can't seem to remember right now, of all these people, white people, either cops or they're calling the cops on black people doing normal things. And not just black people. There was also a person in another video that was attacked over wearing a Puerto Rico shirt. Now, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. And there was a cop there, by the way, and he didn't do anything. She was actually asking for help from the police officer. Wouldn't do it. Oh, no. But she did intervene when there was someone on her side that challenged a person that was verbally harassing her over wearing a stupid shirt. That shows you America in a nutshell. Where if you're, if somebody comes after you, if you're a minority, you're going to get harassed by police officers. But if you're a minority and you're being harassed by a private citizen, well, the police aren't going to come to your side. They're always going to end up being against you. That is the problem here in America. Now, however, they did get an apology. Alex Stokely, the vice president of Barrett and Stokely, which manages the apartment complex, did tell the Indianapolis Star that the manager has since been placed on leave. The company also added they are currently investigating the situation. And so hopefully that police officer, at least, look, that was an off-duty police officer. Hopefully they get fired as the security guard. Because what this was is that it seemed to be racial profiling. Now, the reason that she was there, of course, was because of previous incidents involving non-residents. But if you have a key, it's very likely that you're a resident. In fact, he even said, look, I have a key. I could have just told you whatever number. And I could have told you any number. I could have told you my number, and you still probably would have came after me. Why? It's because it seems to be that I was profiled for not doing a thing. And unfortunately, those situations continue to happen in abundance here in America. And it's because, look, we've got to stop profiling people because they look different. We've got to stop calling the police or having police officers go after and harass people for just doing normal things. Let's stop it, America. Just stop. And that's the only real message that I have for this is just stop calling the cops on people doing regular things. Why don't you actually call the cops on people who are committing actual crimes? Actual crimes. Not, I'm uncomfortable, or he was sitting there for too long, I think, in my opinion. That's not a real crime. And really, if you call the cops and you waste their time, maybe that should be an actual crime. And I'd love to see somebody get punished for that. Because maybe that might be the only way for us to actually stop the situations like this from happening again. Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I've got here today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. If you haven't already, please give us a like and share. Also, thank you for the super chats. I have one to read here from Valerie Ortiz Jimenez, who says, love the Devo reference. Keep up the good work. The world is a big mess, and your work makes it better. Well, thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Thank you, Peter, as well, for donating through the super chat. If you haven't already, please subscribe and consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation. Your support helps make this show possible. In fact, it does make it possible. You guys are the show. So thank you very much for those of you who have already donated, and I appreciate it. All right. So I'm out of here. Great show tomorrow. Make sure to tune in. YouTube.com/TYTNation, 3 p.m. Eastern. We also have a stream on Sunday. We're going to do a 15-minute discussion on civility in the Trump era. That's going to be on Get Vocal. So you can watch that here on YouTube, or you can go sign up to watch that and respond to it with your own video discussions on Get Vocal. So that's GETVOKL. Get Vocal. And we'll have the, of course, website in the description. And we will go and, of course, talk about that when we do the stream. All right. That's it. Love you guys. Thank you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you all tomorrow.